Hey, hello there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of Employee Engagement Live. I'm Shrikant Acharya, your host and the CEO at offineeds.com, a leading corporate gifting company based in India. I'm super excited. Today we have an amazing guest. It's going to be a great conversation. Before I bring her on, let me talk a little bit about Employee Engagement Live, why we do it, and so on. So I'm Shrikant Acharya. We run a leading corporate gifting company, and we've had the opportunity to work with several large organizations. And in the last few years, we've seen employee engagement, conversations around employee engagement, discussions around employee engagement, and a lot of employee engagement seems to have become extremely important. Of course, the reason is obvious, and it's become even more important and even more challenging in these times that we work in, which is remote working and work from home kind of situations. And with the pandemic and with all the turmoil around, employee engagement has become super important as well as challenging. That's why I'm doing these interviews called Employee Engagement Live, where I bring in guests who are experienced professionals from the HR, corporate communication space, and leadership of different large organizations. I've had authors come and speak to us in the past. So that's what's keeping me super excited. And I want to thank you all for taking time out on a Friday evening. I'm sure the lockdown has got lifted, and there are 100 other things that you can do now on a Friday evening. But I really appreciate you taking the time and being here. I'm going to do my best to make sure that your time is put to great use. Let me take a minute to introduce to you the guest speaker of today. Namita Tiwari is a business storyteller, marketing leader, and a digital content evangelist with rich experience around campaigns, content, and communications. She is passionate about creating next generation marketing programs that converge digital, brand, and content. She is the alumnus of Symbiosis Pune and is currently pursuing executive program in accelerated marketing leadership with prestigious Kellogg School of Management. She has contributed to the growth journey of many Fortune 500 companies in her 18 to 20 plus years of experience across companies like HCL, Infosys, Accenture, and is currently working with Tata Communications. I'm excited, and let me bring on the scene Namita Tiwari. Hi, Namita. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shrikant. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And I'm looking forward to this talk on employee engagement.
Awesome. I'm super excited too. So let's start with the first question that I ask every guest that I have on my show. What, according to you, Namita, is employee engagement?
So employee engagement, if you ask me, I think the most important function of employee engagement or the need of employee engagement is to keep employees motivated. Uh, Secondly, have their goals and their aspirations in alignment with the organization, because that's the way you will have a two-way engagement. And of course, find ways to keep them motivated, keep them engaged, keep them happy, not just in terms of work, but in many other ways also. So an employee connects to the organization primarily because of the work and the business and the work conditions and everything. But there's also many other ways, many other aspects an employee can connect with the organization. So it's important to touch on those human and emotional aspects also. So I think employee engagement is very critical, especially in the current scenario where employees are not even going in the office. They are working remotely, so it's important. Employee engagement is of paramount importance, and it's critical to keep them engaged, keep them motivated, productive, and in alignment with what the company wants. And there are ways and means of doing it. There are business ways of doing it. There are emotional ways of doing it. So I think in our talk we will touch on the other part, the emotional ways of connecting with employees.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. So let me remind the audience that Namita is here for another good 30-40 minutes. So it's going to be a super interesting conversation. Namita is a professional business storyteller. So we're going to speak about the importance of storytelling and how what role it plays in employee engagement. So any questions you guys have, please make notes. Please ask those questions, because towards the end of the show, I'm going to open those questions up to Namita. And any of you here who want to say hi to Namita, please type on the comment box. We are simulcast on Facebook, on LinkedIn and on YouTube at the same time. So please go on, bang those keyboards out, and your wishes will reach Namita. Oh, and in case I forgot to tell you, the three most interesting questions will win a 500 rupee gift voucher from the home office. So I hope that's motivation for you to ask out the most interesting questions. With that, Namita, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into storytelling. Let's get into what is business storytelling, but let's get into how did you happen to become a storyteller.
So I'm a marketer, and I got into digital and content marketing about say a decade back. And while working on digital and content marketing, I started working on something called messaging, which is the soul of content, how you communicate content. And that's how on my journey with content and digital and messaging, I got into business storytelling. Business storytelling is a very important way of communicating. It's not about putting facts in front of your customer audiences or employees. It's about weaving the information interestingly, working on what is the key message for that specific audience. We have a concept of personas, so weaving the customers, finding the right messages, and communicating to the right personas, right audiences. It could be employees, customers, prospects, partners, and business storytelling is kind of communicating the benefits, communicating the the proposition in an interesting manner, so that it reaches the right audience in the with the right message, and it's more impactful, and it leads to the desired action from the audiences. So business storytelling is very vast, but I've just tried to sum it up in these two lines. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you did a phenomenal job summing it up. I have a question specifically with respect to personas that you said, right? So I've come across personas in the context of marketing, and we've spoken about. I'm aware that you create personas of your customers. Is there a way to create personas of your of an employee of within the employees of an
Yes.
organization?
Yes.
Okay, tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that.
And I think most of the companies are already doing that also. So
Okay.
if you look at your employees, you will have, of course, the young generation, you will have the mid level, you will have the senior level. You can also personify them or try to segment them. We call them employee cohorts. So make cohorts. You can also look at them from a perspective of, okay, these are the working mothers, these are the youngsters, these are the
Right.
probably the older lot of people, and find out ways to engage with them at their level, at whichever stage of life they are in, not just as a professional but as a person. And that's why the employee engagement storytelling comes into picture. Many of the companies these days are doing these kind of initiatives. There's a special focus on work from home stories, because people are working from home. So what
Right.
happens when a working mom is working from home? What are the challenges she faces? Or a single dad is working from home? Or there are many kinds of stories that come out, and people want to share them. So these days, because of the remote working, many companies have given a platform, for employees to come up with their stories and talk about them. And this has worked really well. I think there are virtual carnivals. There are singing competitions happening on the Teams call. There are all kinds of ways of engaging with employee and with every segment of employee. So, and people are doing that. Something like Pride, which is celebrated across the world, is celebrated almost in every company these days, and there are Pride stories, and there are discussions on Pride. So why is all these things happening? These are happening only to make sure that people are engaged. All the kinds of employees feel inclusive, and they are engaged.
Right. I'd come across a very, very important and a very powerful quote a long time ago. It said, "Facts tell, but stories sell." Right. I thought of that when I came across your profile, and I think stories are very, very important. I love stories, both listening to them as well as telling them. Right. But there's something very interesting and very important that you said. You spoke about how employee stories, how organizations are creating platforms for employees to share their stories, and a lot of interesting stories are coming out and so on. So can you give a little bit more insight into how an organization can create a platform, and what kind of stories are coming out, and how to showcase them, and what could companies do with these stories?
So I'll give an example. Something a company like Microsoft. So
Mm-hmm.
they have a publicly available platform on Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Employee Stories, where
Mm-hmm.
their employees, they come and talk about uh, any important achievement that they made as a Microsoft employee, or anything that they are particularly grateful about as a
Mm.
Microsoft employee. So they're very, very beautiful stories. You will find stories about people with special abilities, how they have made their career in Microsoft. It's a very interesting platform. You can Google and know more about it. But Microsoft has done a really great job. I think they have taken employee stories, employee engagement to a different level altogether.
Oh,
It's worth watching. You will see,
awesome.
how employees talk about uh, their achievements, how they talk about the challenges, and how Microsoft helped them to achieve. So it's a good watch. That is one. Apart from that, many other organizations have, work from home stories. Like every week, there is a work from home story that they
Mm.
release to the
Right.
employees' internal comms. Every week, there is some particular achievement, that how this challenge was sorted by an employee. There are achievement stories, there are engagement stories, there are stories which are totally about the person's personal life, like the single mom story, or a single dad story,
Right.
or people with special abilities. So there are very many ways of engaging with employees.
Awesome. Awesome. So we have a good number of people. There's Praveen, Ganesh, Nagasri, Ivan, Sandhya, Mohammed, Hisham. Everybody saying hi. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for your message and thank you for cheering us. I'm glad you're enjoying this. So let's get to the next question. Mohammed, I know you have a question already. I'm going to pick it up towards the end of the show. It's a really, really good question. And I think Namita has an interesting answer for that. So, Namita, the next question I have that I want to ask you is what are the top challenges that come with engaging employees in a work from home situation specifically? If I'm not wrong, you took up a job recently, and I think
Yes, I switched.
you got onboarded as you were working remotely. I don't think you've gone to your office, have you?
I have been just once, but yeah, I've been only once for the vaccination. So I'm grateful to my
Mm.
employers. But yes, so see, the challenges are very many, because it's very difficult to have the employee connect when the person is working remotely and has always, has joined the company remotely and working remotely. What the company is doing to address them? There is companies are very sensitive. I think most of the organizations are very, very sensitive. They are sensitive to the fact that the employees get the right work life balance, because when
Mm.
you're working from home and living at home, the line between professional and
Yeah,
personal life gets blurred totally.
correct.
So companies are sensitive. They want to ensure that the employee gets the right work life balance, which is the number one challenge. The
Yeah.
second challenge is, people are facing a lot of mental stress, and working from home also has its own stress. It's just staying indoors, because you cannot go out because of the virus, also has its own stress. So I think another
Yeah.
important initiative that most of the companies are taking is on the mental wellness. So you will
Mm.
find that most of the companies will offer their employees a session on mental wellness, or every morning
Mm.
there'll be a invite in their Outlook, where
Mm.
they can click and just join a meditation session, which I think is
Mm.
incredible, which I think is really, really good. I mean, it's a very good initiative that most of the organizations are doing that. Then
Right.
there could be any concerns or grievances around remote working. I think that's also being taken care of. It
Mm.
is not just hearing out the employee, what is the concern, what is the problem, because sometimes even something as basic as changing the password on the laptop, or some technical problem can
Yeah.
delay things, because you're totally remote. You will be
Yeah.
those things also, companies are trying to find ways to do and address them faster. I
Yeah.
think these are the top two, three things. But I think work-life balance and mental wellness are two
Yeah.
key initiatives. Some companies have also been kind enough, like when they know that that COVID has hit an employee, they would send a COVID employee wellness kit, and they would
Yeah.
show sensitivity. That's also a very good way of engaging with the employees and showing them that you're there.
Yeah.
So those things are there. Many companies may have COVID leaves also, or
Mm.
uh, those kind of initiatives of taking a day or giving a day off to the employee
Mm.
have also been observed in many organizations.
Right, right. Yeah. I'm with you. There's an Apple service center very close to my house, and it was closed throughout when the lockdown was there for almost 2 months or something like that. And the day it opened, there was a long queue, almost 30 to 40 people standing outside to enter. So there were so many people who had issues with their laptop, right? And if they're working in a great organization, just solving simple problems like that, because those are hindrances. If you were there in office, you would probably go to the admin section or the IT section and get
Yes.
that resolved. And for an organization to be able to support with something as simple as that can be a significant issue resolved, right? Yeah. All
Yes.
right. So let's talk about some of the most you talked about work from home balance, which is work life balance, which is, I think, especially in this context, it's easier said than done. Very few
Yes.
organizations and very few individuals are able to maintain that balance. You have teams, and you have emails configured on your phone, and you're working across geographies, and you might get messages and emails at any time of the day, and maybe even at nights, and it's very difficult to resist answering those then and there. So that line has kind of blurred. And you also mentioned about meditation and about mental well-being. That's a great point that you spoke about. But I also want you to talk about some of the most effective employee engagement initiatives that you have seen that have been taken in any of your organizations, current or past, or anything maybe that you would have heard.
So recognition, rewards and recognition is a very critical way of making the employee feel engaged. You can also have, different kind of programs that you enroll your employees. For example, there are specific women leadership programs that companies usually run, or there's a special leadership training sessions. There could be other kind of sessions wherein which address to the employee needs, and we the organization runs those kind of programs. Uh, in my experience, if you ask me, I think there are it's important to to engage employees of all age and all phases of life. So in the organizations that I have been a part of, there have been special programs to make sure that the youngsters are engaged. So there will be a youth festival, online youth festival. There would be women centric programs, or they would be an online event talking about the people with the special abilities. How are they enjoying the company? How are they enjoying the company? So there would be programs of these kinds,
Yeah.
which basically they are trying to touch the emotional side of the human side of the employee. It's
Right.
not necessarily business oriented, because business orientation, work orientation is definitely a part of everyday life for an employee. If you want to make sure that the employee is engaged, you will have to tap on the other human aspect also.
Absolutely agree with you. So let the questions keep rolling in, guys. I see a couple of questions that have come in, so put them out in the chat box there, and in a few more minutes, I'm going to open it up so that Namita can answer those to you. So Namita, you spoke about rewards and recognition and things like that, right? So I want to ask you here. Do you see any role for merchandise? I love wearing Often Eats branded T-shirts, right? So do you see any role merchandise has to play in employee engagement?
In the current scenario, to be very honest, I don't know, because my experience has been that it's when we're working remotely. I'm not sure how, but there could be ways. There could be innovative ways of pitching the merchandise to the employees. It could be in form of when you're rewarding or recognizing an employee, there could be a congratulations set
Yeah.
of uh, beautiful artifacts delivered, or
Yeah.
something of that sort. When you know that there's a let's say that there's a childbirth in the employee's family, it depends
Yes.
on how the company policies are, but you can have a gifting policy there. You can also have a gifting policy for the birthday of the employee or the anniversary of the employee. So there are many ways of leveraging merchandise and employee engagement. But how much I have seen, I'm not very to be very honest, I've not seen much. But yes,
Okay.
there could be very many ways. Something like if an employee is suffering from COVID, you could send across a COVID, health kit, or a COVID recovery congratulations kit, things like
Correct.
that. So
Yeah.
merchandise has really been it's been an important part of employee engagement or employee exchange, exchanging of gifts with employee and all that. But I think in the current scenario with the remote working, it needs to be tweaked a bit how you can pitch merchandise.
All right, perfect. So, Namita, I want to ask you, let's get back to stories, right? I really want to hear some of the stories. So, tell me one or two stories that really moved you. You came across this and you felt that, this was very, very impactful. Does anything
So
come to mind?
I read a story on the Microsoft Stories platform of one of the employees. She was a specially abled lady, and she picked up coding and she did coding, and I think that was very very memorable story that I came across. I have come across some stories of working moms which have really touched my heart in some of my previous organizations, where they have spoken about the challenges of managing career with while being a mother, and also while managing the challenges of the career of working from home and managing family and everything. So those stories have touched me. But the most touching stories that I have come across of employee engagement, I think, have been pride stories. I've come across some very interesting pride stories in some of my previous organizations, and I think they did a great job of making employees feel inclusive. And while being a part of a large organization, you have your identity, acceptance, everything. It's very inspiring. Actually, I will more than touching. It was inspiring to have those pride stories, witnessing those pride stories. So those are being the key stories. There would also be stories, where you are rewarding and recognizing an employee, where you can talk about their journey, and that can also be inspiring to other employees. I think recognition, rewards and recognition is a very, very key lever of employee engagement,
Right.
especially from the business side also, because when the person has worked hard, they've shown the results, it's important to, clearly reward and recognize them. That's important.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me, what is the benefit or the impact from a company or an organization point of view with using stories vis-a-vis any other way, not using stories, right? Talking about policies or any
Yeah.
other way of communicating, not using stories.
So not using stories can be very boring. I don't think the information would even be consumed well. So if you have just a policy document right there thrown at your face, I don't know
Yeah.
how many employees would even read that. Most of the employees, most of the companies have combined storytelling in their way of engaging. So, for example, there would be a virtual assistant who you can talk to, and possibly he will tell you everything about what you need to do in a more interesting manner, kind of a thing, not necessarily as a list of steps or a list of facts. So storytelling has come a long way in employee engagement, but I still, as a business storyteller, I still feel there's a lot more that we can do in terms of leveraging storytelling in employee engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you. I concur with you on that. Like for example, if an organization would say we are an inclusive organization and we don't have a gender or
Yeah.
any such orientation, that would be one way of saying it. But once somebody starts
Yes.
sharing their pride stories, or you spoke
Yes.
about that mother, working mother who was able to do something, or a person with a disability. I came across a very interesting story somewhere on LinkedIn recently where uh, somebody shared that I got promoted as some kind of a developer or something like that. And he shared that about 9 years back, I used to be a watchman in the same company. And in the
So
nights, somebody gave me the opportunity to learn coding, and I started learning coding. Now I'm a software developer, right? You
yes,
can
that's a
you can always
Zoho
put
story.
it. That's a Zoho
That's a
story, right?
Zoho story, yeah.
Zoho
And also
story, yeah.
one more story that I came across some time back. This is a Zoho story, and this is interesting. There is a session that Axis Bank held on Pride this year. Very very inspiring. I think you can Google on LinkedIn if you get a chance. This was a conversation among among the a Pride session among the special people from the Axis Bank. It was
Right.
really, really inspiring. I think it went beyond storytelling, because it was just, live people talking about their issues and talking about their careers and how great they feel being a part of Axis Bank. So that
Awesome.
is something I recently came across.
Yeah, yeah. So all of these, the company can lay out as a policy, right? They can say that, we support working moms, we support. So it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing when somebody tells you the story, then the others in the organization feel motivated, feel proud. to be a part of that organization. So I'm completely with you. Now that you talk about it, I can't think of another way of communicating, without using stories, right? All right, Hisham, I see you have a lot of questions, and I'm going to ask all of those questions in just a bit. So, guys, I want to remind you, in case you have any more questions, please type in there, and in just a few more minutes, I'm going to open these questions up to Namita. But before that, let me ask you about leadership, right? So, employee engagement is. Do you believe employee engagement is pushed top down, and what role does leadership have to play in employee engagement in the organization?
I think even if employee engagement is pushed top down, I think it's very important to employee engagement is, uh, I mean, the way it is actually, the way you actually interact with an employee. So uh, I think even if it is if it is pushed down, it will still stand strong only if it is executed if in the
Yeah,
interactions as well. So
correct.
as an employee, your first contact person is your reporting manager. And I was reading somewhere, and I think there was a Gallup study that I think we both looked at some time back, and it mentioned that 64% of the employees are disengaged.
Yeah.
And after the pandemic, the situation has worsened. Actually, 15% more are disengaged. So,
Well,
in the current scenario, it's important that the reporting manager, you have to, as a reporting manager, you're very well connected with your subordinates, and whatever is the employee engagement tactics or strategy which the leadership decides. Of course, leadership has to endorse for employee engagement. And in my humble experience, most of the leadership's teams are in favor of employee engagement. I think it is a trickling down is where it kind
yeah,
of gets a bit deviated.
yeah,
So
yeah,
leadership is always in favor of employee engagement, employee growth, in every way. I mean, for every company. It is just that by the time it trickles down, it tends to get a bit deviated from what it was planned for. So it's important that your team members are feeling as engaged and as motivated while interacting with you. The current times are taxing. It is
yeah.
challenging to work from home, work just
Yes,
work, and be inside the home. There are many challenges, and if you have children, you have other challenges. You have elderly
yes,
people, you have to take care of them. So
yeah,
I think it's important to have that sensitivity while getting work done from your team members. Get the work done, but also be humane and sensitive to them. That's important. Weaving storytelling in your uh, in your employee engagement is also important. It gives kind of a credibility. So it's not just you're telling them that, okay, we are doing this and we are doing that. It's like you're showing a story. Here it is. It was done, and this is how the employee feels. So I think most of the companies are waking up to it, but it still has
right.
a long way to go.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen, Namita, you shared some amazing resources. There's an article from Forbes, and there's another article from HBR, and a YouTube link which you shared. So, guys, I've posted it in the comments. It's come on Facebook and YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's not yet come for some reason. I'm going to post that after this.
No
Please come
problem.
back and check it out. And I think those resources really awesome. So let's open up to some of the questions that we have that are here. I have Hisham. Mohammed Hisham is a regular on our show, and he's an excellent HR professional. And I like the question that he's asking: what is the follow up action to an employee story, and what are the drawbacks to using stories?
Okay, so follow-up action to every story is you can invite more stories. For one way of that is you can invite more stories. The other way is make sure that the stories are shared. So if they go viral within your employees, that's a great success for the story.
Yeah, yeah,
You can invite more stories. So do you have some any of the other employees? Do you want to share some story of yours? That's one way of building, and that is what is going to bring the momentum of engagement also in the employees. uh, Shortcoming of storytelling. I am a storyteller. I can't think of that. um, maybe I think it's important to keep the communication a bit measured also. Sometimes you have to, when you are a passionate storyteller that like me can over communicate also. So I think maybe just that can be one drawback or one checkpoint while storytelling. Have your stories, release your stories one at a time, kind of a thing. That is something that I've learned in my experience. But other than that, I can't think of any drawback. I would love to know from him if he feels there's a drawback, or if you want to share
Oh,
something.
Yes, nothing comes to my mind too. I love stories. So Hisham, you heard that. I think that's a great answer. If you have something in mind saying, I think this is the backdrop of storytelling, please write it in the comments below and I'll read that out. We have a few more interesting questions. I want to read this one out from Ganesh. Okay, I know this is an employee engagement conversation that's going on, but I know Ganesh is from sales and he asks, what does he say? How can I apply business storytelling to sales? Would you
Yes,
like to take
convert
that?
your case studies. Yeah, convert your case studies into business stories. Maybe that, because when you're selling, you essentially are going to talk about some of your credentials, some of the customers that you've done. So convert that into stories. Try to understand the current challenges of the prospect, and if you can weave that into a story while presenting the solution, that could also be one way of using stories. But one of the very most credible way for a salesman to use stories is to convert their case studies and credentials into business stories and present them, have a video made on them, things like that. That would be
Right,
apt for a salesperson.
right, right. Awesome. Actually, I have a question which kind of relates to the answer which you gave, which is from Praveen. He's asking on YouTube. What is the difference between case study and storytelling?
Yeah, so case study is possibly a set of information of what you did with the customer laid out. Story is when you are uh, presenting it interestingly, engagingly, where you are talking about the challenges and you're talking about the benefits. You're talking about more about the benefits that came to the customer than your product features. So these are the normal features of storytelling. You talk about things that are directly relevant to their target audience. It's not about talking about your solutions and your features. It's mostly talking about what is the benefit, what is the impact you had on the customer. You start with that, and then you come to what is it that you particularly offer. So there's a huge difference between case study and storytelling. I think business storytelling is the most evolved and new age form of case study.
Okay. I want to respond. Mohammed Hisham has responded here. He says, so often more than not, the management might be apprehensive about the outcome of employee story. In your experience, have you had any bad experiences?
None so far. No, I don't think management would have any. I've come across a case where management was taken aback by the impact of employee stories. I think it's not been the case so far, and
Not
I've
been the
not
case.
observed such a case.
Yeah.
Uh, I think what he's mentioning about is negative story. Maybe an employee can come
Correct.
up with a negative story. So
Correct.
that is something that you may want to control. The management may want to control. I think I
Yeah.
would suggest that the management should talk one on one to such employees and resolve their grievances if there is a negative
Right.
experience shared by an employee. I
Right.
certainly would not recommend and management will also not share it
Yeah.
with other employees. It's more important to resolve it
Right.
than share it.
Yeah. So just to clarify, stories need not be live, right? That's not what we are saying here. You're probably
Yes, yes.
thinking about Instagram stories where you switch on the camera
No, no,
and start
no.
sharing. So it
No.
need not be like that. It's just the way it's been put out. It's in a story format. It's about first person saying it, that kind of a thing. Is that correct,
Yeah,
Namita?
it's the narrative, how you talk about an
Yeah.
experience, how you talk about a success, what you talk about first. Do you think about the message before you actually come up, create the story? Think of the messaging, weave that messaging in your content, create a story. It's very easy to look at a set of information and have people not impressed by it. So we have to
Right.
think, spend some time, convert it into a story, and then you will have the results.
Fantastic. Absolutely. I hope that answers your question, Hisham. I have a very interesting question. I really like this one. This is from Harshita Dubey. She's on YouTube. She's asking, how do you encourage employees to participate in workshops and in blog posts?
Oh, okay, so
Tough one.
yes, yes, very, very, very good question. I think one or two ways that I have tried tackling it in my experiences that I involve leadership. Ask leadership to write some blogs. push those blogs, and then maybe I also used to run a competition of sorts where I would request the employees to send their blogs, and we would choose one as a blog of the week kind of a thing. So
Right.
that worked, huh? So have some kind of a recognition attached to it. Have leadership endorsement. Push your blog platform, leveraging a leadership endorsement. I think these are 2-3 ways that I have tried, doing it.
Yeah.
You could also, you could think through, instead of choosing one blog as a, one blog per week as the best blog or something, you can also choose topics. So choose topics, because many of the times you have employees who are techies. They are passionate about one technology or one particular
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
So you can touch on those employees. So have those topics, curate the topics and talk about them, and invite employees to engage with you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's
I was going to say the same thing. That's a great idea that, instead of putting it out on a board saying everybody come and participate, you can curate, what did you say? Create cohorts and say, okay, this set of people might be interested in this kind of topic, and approach them
yeah.
and identify the most influential people, and then, bring them in one at a time. I think that would be a good approach. I have a very interesting question here from Arjun. He is asking, who is your favorite storyteller?
Wow. Oh my God. Okay, so I'll mention the names who I follow.
Yeah.
There's a marketing guru called Seth Godin.
Seth Godin, yes.
There's a marketing guru called Guy Kawasaki. So these are the people I follow. My favorite storytellers would be these. If you ask me the companies, I can tell you. I love Microsoft kind of
Right.
storytelling. I think it's incredible. Um, in many of the content pieces, I like Cisco also. Some of their content pieces is very interesting. Um, so that's there are many other companies. Accenture has great content, storytelling content. If you were to visit their website, you will have it. Um, so these are the companies and people that I look up to.
Right. Awesome. Love it. I love Seth Godin. I think he's an amazing, amazing storyteller. You just can't stop reading The Purple Cow, which is a top selling book from Seth Godin. I have a question here from Ravi Kumar. He says, is storytelling relevant in current scenario where we are changing jobs, opportunities with hiring managers to crack the same? I'm not sure what he means by crack the same, but I think he means, things are changing very frequently and there's a lot of chaos out there, and so on. Is storytelling relevant?
I think storytelling is very relevant. I think the only way you can, be relevant in today's time is storytelling. Like either it is, where you're not actually meeting people. You have to present your content or talk about your content in the most interesting way. You are not going to meet that customer physically. You're not going to meet that partner physically or employees. So it's important to. I think this is the best time for storytelling to do it right.
Yeah.
It's the time which needs storytelling. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my take on it.
Absolutely. There couldn't be a better time, according to me, for storytelling, because there are so many challenges. There's so much chaos. There is so much turmoil that's going on. How do you motivate somebody in such times? The best way, according to me, is to be able to tell them a story about how somebody else did it and allow them to be inspired by that story, and improve their own situation or their own circumstances or something like that. So talking about that, let's talk a little bit about motivation. What can organizations do to keep their employees and their teams motivated in these challenging times?
So there are 2-3 ways of that. The first is the business way, like in terms of work, keep them motivated, give them the right growth plans, have those conversations every quarter with employees. This is to make sure that they're engaged and they're in alignment with the business goals of the company. So their professional goals are in alignment with the companies. I think this is where the mid management layer takes a critical importance in the way employees feel engaged. So that is very important. Secondly, would be yes, I mean, make sure that they are recognized. So one way is, the first thing is to have the goals aligned. The second way is to make sure that they're recognized, all the hard work. It is very difficult to work in such environments. It is very difficult as a manager also to gauge, because a manager would also have their own pressures. But what the
Correct.
point of trying to make is that if you want to keep employees engaged, have their professional goals in line with the company's professional goals. Give them a clear growth plan so that they know where they are going. So that's important. Many a times mid management tends to kind of give that a backseat, and so it's important that that comes out. Then there would be other beyond work engagements. How can you make an employee feel belong, that the person belongs to this company, by doing and communicating what you're doing in various other fields, whether it is the CSR initiatives, whether it is any other initiatives. Have those communications with the employees to make them feel that okay, they are involved, they're inclusive, and they can also give them opportunities to contribute there also. I think these are the three ways where you can engage employees in the current challenging scenarios and be sensitive to them.
Yeah.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is aligning their goals to the organization's goals. If that can be done, I think that's the natural path, right? And
And
anything
the
else
growth,
that's
and the growth plan also. So many
and
a
the
times
growth
it,
plan.
it tends to get it tends to get be given a back seat unless employee himself or herself is asking for it. But if an
Yeah.
organization proactively gives a growth plan, irrespective of what level you're at, just think through and think through what you would offer this employee 2 years down the line. That would also be very important to keep the employee engaged, because people tend to switch or tend to look out. In the current scenario, there is a very high attrition rate, very high turnover rate. So the reason I think is this only because the current challenge is it's not that easy to have all
Yeah.
these points taken
Correct.
care of. Yes.
Yeah, agree with you. So it's been going great, guys. I want to remind you we have a few more minutes left and then we're going to be winding up. So if you have any more interesting questions, please bring them on. While you do that, let me combine a couple of questions here. One, Sandhya asked, how do you prepare your brand for business storytelling? And Hisham has come up with another interesting question saying, is there a framework or structure for effective storytelling? I'm kind of combining, throwing both these questions at you. You can answer it however you like.
So I like the question about the framework of storytelling. So yes, so I have been observing the storytelling for the last few years, and the way it works, the so-called structure of the storytelling is that firstly you come on a common ground, try to find a way to come on a common ground with your target audience, and then look at what they want. So your messaging has to be in alignment with what they want. So have your content first come on a common ground. Have your content and messaging aligned to what your target audience needs. Then you can bring the challenges. So what is their problem? You are on their side and you are seeing things from their side. So what is the problem? What is the challenge? Talk about the challenges. Then talk about either talk about how you have already solved the challenges, if it's a business story where you've already done it. If you have not done it, then talk about how you can do it, what can be the benefits out of it, and then you talk about the products and solutions that will help you, your company's product and solution that will help you. That will be the last thing. So you start with coming on a common ground with the target audience. Look at what their problem is. Think of how the challenges can be resolved, what benefits can they be benefited from, and then talk about. So this is the so-called storytelling structure that I have observed and learned recently. And what was the second question? The other question?
How can a business prepare? Let me read that out. She says,
Yeah.
how do you prepare your brand for business storytelling?
Yes, so that's a very good question. I think a brand prepares for business storytelling by having all its have all the content aligned. Think through what your brand positioning is. Basically, refresh your brand from the customer's perspective. Think through what are the benefits that you can offer to the customer. That's how your brand language should be. What am I offering the customer? Have all your so-called case studies, stories in front of you. Articulate a messaging, a message house of how you're gonna talk about your products or your services or your success to the customer. What is going to be your brand language? And then you basically the way you communicate your story, your main story should be every content piece should be in alignment with your messaging and your storytelling. So it's a big task. it's not easy for a brand to do that.
Yeah.
I think it will take some time, but it's important to get your messaging right and have your messaging consistent across all your content, whether it's your website, whether it's your
Yeah.
Instagram, social media, everywhere you should talk the same language, I think. And more deeper, if you want to go to storytelling, then your case studies, your business stories, your partner stories, your employee stories should all be in alignment with your messaging.
Yeah, and as overwhelming as it might seem, I think it's good to
Yes.
start with small baby steps.
Yes, it's good to start
Right.
with small. So maybe you can start with your customer facing content first, and and then take the next steps.
Absolutely. Thank you, Namita. Thank you. It's been wonderful having you here. It's been a great conversation. And we've had some amazing interaction with the audience. Thank you, everyone, for all the questions. I know we were not able to pick up all the questions, but I think we were able to group some of the questions together, and Namita was able to answer most of them. If you have more questions, put it out in the comment. I will try to bring that out to Namita, and I'll try to respond to that in the chat section itself. And I promised three of the best questions will get a 500 rupee gift voucher from one of our properties, thehomeoffice.in. The Home Office is a work from home solution, so you can go check it out and place order stuff that you need to work from home more efficiently. So in my view, Namita, or Namita, do you want to pick up the three winners, or shall I do that?
I would suggest, Shrikant, you go ahead and pick the
All right.
winners.
Amazing questions. I think the three picks that I have is Mohammad Hisham. He takes the cake every single time. It's not just been a question. I think it's been an amazing conversation with Hisham. That's one. And Harshita Dubey from YouTube. I think she asked the question about how do you encourage employee participation in workshops and blog posts. I think that
That's a
was a
very good
great question. That's a good one. And the third one, which I think really kind of pulled the rug out of the fit, was from Arjun, who asked, "Who's your favorite storyteller?" So
Yes,
these
it's
are
good.
three of my favorite questions. So Arjun, Harshita, and Mohammad Hisham, somebody from my team will reach out to you and tell you how you can get your gift. Thank you so much, Namita, for being on the show. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Thank you so much, Shrikant, for having me here, and congratulations to all the winners also for the questions. I had a wonderful session, and it was great interacting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Bye.